we can go ahead and get started. First off, thank you all so much for coming. We're excited that you're here. Amanda and I are looking forward to talking to you a little bit about digital and multimodal projects. So my name's Ashley Rapamio. If you don't know me, I work in the library in the digital research and inquiry project. Okay, first thing up is we have our agenda for the day. We are going to start off with a little bit about what digital and multimodal projects even are in the first place. We're going to talk a little bit about why you might want to consider them for your classroom. And we'll get into some tips for designing them if you've never designed one before, incorporating them into your class, and then how to support your students. Because if it's new to you, it might be new to them as well. We have some learning objectives for today. By the end of this session, we hope that you would be able to discuss the benefits of a non-traditional student assignment, outline basic design conventions, name strategies for integration in the classroom, and name support resources for your students. So before we get going, we wanted to poll all of you to kind of get a sense of where you all are at with these types of assignments. So if you go to menti.com, you can use a phone, you can use a tablet, you can use a laptop. It will prompt you for a code, and the code is right here up at the top. It's 959547. So type that in, and then you can answer the poll question. The poll is, have you ever taught with a multimodal or digital project before? So digital projects, what we are talking about when we talk about those today, are any assignment that a student will do that uses technology in essentially one of two ways. Some of them will ask students to use technology to advance their research, or advance their analysis. So this would be something like using computational analysis or doing a network analysis, something like even using a statistical program to do statistics faster and in greater volume than they would be able to do by hand. You can also use technology, students can also use technology to expand their research publication options. So instead of doing a final exam or research paper, they could create an academic podcast. They could create something like a database that corresponds to their research paper, kind of expanding the options for how they present their research to them. Multimodal projects have more to do with a text. So students are being asked to compose a text. These are very popular in writing studies courses. And a text in this context is actually any piece of communication. And the idea with a multimodal project is to move beyond words alone into different modes of communication. And the idea is to ask you to do multiple modes. That's where you get the multimodal. Where they kind of Venn diagram would overlap between these two and what they share is that students are often being asked to create knowledge in ways that go beyond print, beyond words alone. And they often both use technology to expand with their research creation process. So they do share those similarities, but they're not exactly the same thing. And I'm going to pass it to Amanda to talk a little bit more about multimodal.
Research from Brady City scholar Gaggage, and I've linked her article on the slide, kind of a citation if you want to go take a look. But this is actually something that would work across different courses. You don't just have to be teaching first year writing. There's something in early before class to make this work. So Gaggage defines a text piece of communication that can take many forms. She identifies there's 5 main modes of communication. So visual, example would be video, spatial, so you get infographic with map, gestural would be speech, oral would be podcast, and linguistic would be words. The example I used to have with my students think about Zoom University days. Zoom class, who most likely had a PowerPoint going. We probably had to check many times the way that the boxes are arranged on the screen. You have multiple different modes when you're taking an online course. 5 different modes. Most assignments honestly use more than one mode. So another example like I could give that more of your students would feel comfortable with and think like, oh, okay, maybe it's a bit of a stretch, but technically yes. Essay. So the essay is linguistic words, spatial, the way that the margins and spacing is on the paper, and the visual depending on the font, italics, if there's images, the evolves, that sort of thing. As professors, we do tend to privilege linguistic above all other modes, and we may not always consider how much we use assignments often when those students demonstrate knowledge in different ways, they might select a way that may enable them to demonstrate their individual strengths better, or you surprise students by getting their interest using them, especially if they're somewhat hesitant to write just another paper. Great. So we're thinking about our benefits for students. There's many benefits when we incorporating digital into project courses. One huge benefit is UDL, Universal Design for Learning, which encourages offering multimodal communication and expression in classroom assignments, especially the choice aspect. If you're saying students they could choose between different roles, so maybe one student's going to do a podcast, one person's going to do an academic poster using resources from the library. Maybe someone else is going to do a diary. There's multiple different ways for them to engage and choose what works best for them. Multiple projects often include technology. So when our students are incorporating technology in their research work, they're also looking to develop digital literacy skills. Our students might be called digital natives. They're very comfortable with using the technology that they are very used to. They might be able to navigate TikTok or Instagram fluently, but if you're asking them to add a file to OneDrive, or to share a file in a different way, it might be a very different story. I appreciate the other folks smiling. Information literacy skills. So we want to think about the ability to access and evaluate digitally acquired information. The ways that we might be doing this in a digital project is most likely going to be different than a traditional assignment, but our students need to get used to some of these ways of sharing information. They need to learn how to produce high quality, responsible digital communications. I think about, this is probably true for all of your students, anyone who's done an internship or applied to jobs in the last few years, employers are increasingly asking for digital skills, and they're expecting your students to come out of universities having those skills. The other big one, obviously, consistent integration of research. So the same citation marks that work in a traditional essay don't necessarily work in a multimodal assignment. Multimodal creators do acknowledge your research and their sources. They just use different ways of doing this. So think maybe a hyperlink. Maybe there's a transcript of the podcast. Maybe there's source lists. Maybe they're just doing a verbal narrative feedback, right? If we want our students to have these skills, we need to provide opportunities to use these multiple literacies and modes of communication in various diverse learning situations. Our students won't develop that rhetorical dexterity to shift from one rhetorical situation to the next unless we give them these opportunities in our classrooms and the support to do so. When you think about modeling appropriate strategies and tools to appropriately express and distribute information from these situations, and we also show our students how to target specific audiences with the right mode for each situation. 21st century communication is different. Think of all the ways that we communicate in the 21st century, but ours people learning. And it feels like every single semester, there's a new way to do this. So recently, digital multimodal science also helps students practice across multiple literacies and in various alternative learning situations package explains. So when we assign multiple projects, students might panic at first. I think about that poll. I will look at my students if they ever done a multimodal assignment. And a couple of them might raise their hands, but a majority of them are like, no. But once you start having the brainstorm, they've done a presentation, they've done a speech, they've made a poster, but they may not be thinking about how to demonstrate the knowledge they've gained in your classroom or the skills they acquired in your class in a mode that they could choose, right? So they need some help connecting their past experiences to these new rhetorical situations and thinking about what they can transfer from past writing experiences into this new mode, right? It's our job to ensure students gain the skill and knowledge of their course, but it's also our job to transfer the knowledge and experience into academic assignments and consider how they can do this beyond their classrooms. So I want you to think about a time once 5 years when we faced a new multimodal course situation. Most of us quickly learned to reimagine something we did every day due to the pandemic, whether that be online learning, videos, infographics, or some other kind of multimodal text. Think about the moment that you realize I actually have to learn how to use Canvas now. I can't just keep using Blackboard because a year sometimes told Blackboard lip sync. Yes. So introduce multiple projects, preparing our students to do this kind of work that most adults have to do every single day. It's a good opportunity to align academic experiences with their life comes in school and reinforce that what we do in the classroom done relevance to the real world and will translate to future experiences. Um, yeah, these real life is still important. And as much as we are hearing that employers want experience with AI or X, Y, and Z right now, strong communication skills, reading skills still matter. And being able to choose the mode that works best, depending on the total situation, your audience, most certainly is a vital skill right now.
Okay, great. So now that we talked a little bit about why you might want to try these out in your classroom, we want to talk you through a little bit about how to design a digital multimodal assignment. So the good news is, and something that hopefully is comforting to you if you've never tried this, is that good assignment design for these types of assignments looks a lot like good assignment design in general. So we're still doing some of the same things. We are aligning our assignments with course learning outcomes, with instructional goals, thinking through what types of success we could demonstrate through the learning outcomes. What is your kind of vision for the skills that students will learn and will demonstrate? We're still clarifying the purpose of the assignment. We're making sure students know why they're being asked to do this. We're articulating the task very clearly. We're making sure that students know exactly what steps they need to take and what the final product is going to look like. We are specifying parameters. So if you have a length requirement, if you have a certain number of citations or type of citation you would like students to use, all of that is still going into this new style of submit. Also, outlining the evaluation criteria, right? So all of this hopefully looks a little bit familiar to you in terms of designing an assignment. When thinking about the best practices for digital and multimodal assignment design, what they do have to be is still strong, rigorous academic work. So a digital or multimodal assignment should still incorporate the same components of a traditional one. And students are still going to practice those same skills if you go through these same motions. So, you're still asking your students to present central thesis, integrate their sources, synthesize the information, cite their sources, as Amanda said. Where they differ is highlighted here in the teal, which hopefully you can see the table's a little bit in the way. But this is where the multiple modes of communication with different types of technology come in to add a little something extra to the assignment. So digital multimodal assignments, we have some special considerations as well that we want to make sure we're clear. Many of these are fairly straightforward, but they just might not be something that you've typically thought about before you're designing the assignment. So if you are asking students to give you work that is in a different format than a test or a research paper, what we traditionally do, you should think through and choose the format, right? Fairly straightforward. But you want to think through options for the final products that you want students to turn into. So think about what formats align best with your learning outcomes and with your instructional goals again, and that'll help you identify then the most appropriate approach and what kind of features you're looking for in that final product. And that kind of lends then into the options. So as you can imagine, so digital multimodal projects open up a lot of different options for students. So you, as the instructor, should spend a little bit of time thinking through how you want to make that assignment. So is free reign fine with you? Are you going to accept any kind of final product? That can work really well. There's some instructors and depending on the assignment. So Amanda will talk a little bit about some examples from her class in a bit, and she gives students free reign. So they do a reflection assignment and they can pick whatever kind of modality they would like to pick. That wouldn't necessarily work for every assignment or for every course or even for every instructor. And so you also have the option to kind of narrow it down to a few choices. So I've worked with professors before who, they'll say, I want you to do X, Y, Z terms. And then I would accept a blog post, I would accept a short video, I would accept a time. So that's perfectly acceptable to do too. Again, the answer is still lying in your purpose and your goal for the assignment and kind of the overall goal of your course. Could go back to personal preference too. I personally don't love watching videos. If I go to a news article with just a video, I generally don't stick around. So I probably would be requesting these students would make a lot of videos from to watch, so that's in there too. But you do want to still think about the purpose of your course. Um, then you want to think through the available tools and the available resources for your students. So if you're going to be asking students to create a certain type of project, you want to spend some time at the outset in designing your assignment, thinking about the digital methods you'll ask them to use, the digital tools, and what kind of technical infrastructure they should use to complete the project. So if they're going to need some special tools to create it, you want to make sure those tools are available to them. And again, here you have options, right? You can leave it completely open, or if it makes more sense for you, you can ask them to use a specific tool. If you are using a specific tool for this particular assignment, you want to think through how they're going to get access to the tools. So it's a good idea to evaluate what we have available through AU. So there are a number of different technologies we have on campus that students can use. We have the licenses for them. Sometimes they need to go to a computer lab to access them. Sometimes they can download them on their system. So you want to spend some time kind of figuring out what's available and what they can use easily. If none of those tools available through AU fit, which is perfectly fine and might happen, then I would recommend selecting tools that are either open access, open access for them, or they are free in some way. Because we don't necessarily want the students to not be able to do well because of not able to access something that you're asking them to access, right? We don't want them to be stressing about that when we're supposed to be focusing on their learning and demonstrating their knowledge. And I mentioned rubrics before on a previous slide. It is good assessment design to determine ahead of time how the students are going to be graded on their assignment. So thinking through what are you expecting the final product to look like? What should include or not include? One thing that is specific to a digital or multimodal assignment that sometimes there's people often grade as that technical aspect. If you are asking students maybe to create an infographic or something, you might feel a little out of your depth on how to grade one. So I am here to suggest that you don't necessarily need to make that technical ability a large part of your evaluation. For most people at AU, in this classes at AU, it is not necessary to expect of students a professional level product. We do have some, courses where students are making social media content or they're making things like that. That would be the point of the class. But for most of the instructors here, I would imagine that's not really the point. We would go back to the previous slide where we're thinking about having students demonstrate the research that they've done or the reflection that they've done, kind of the process that they've gone through. And so you might want to consider, we also talking a little bit more about these, is doing an effort-based grading or labor-based rubric where you're really asking students to kind of focus on the process that they did and the research they've done and the learning that they've done rather than creating a professional level database or interactive website, something like that.
So, now, the process, each state's grading, but it's over process grading. And it's clear where you can start to connect limit the development that there you go.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so now we've designed a new assignment. There are a number of considerations to integrate a new assignment into the classroom to provide enough support to your students. So, if this type of assignment is less familiar to you than a traditional assignment, that chances are it may be new to your students as well. And so kind of this slide could be distilled down to, we're going to provide extra planning, extra explanation, more time, and more support for the students.
I think to students go back here, make about where look semester if you start just second before track studies and then start walking different steps, process-based assignments, reflections, drafts, conferences, your feedback, and then something that maybe do for the final project. It will most likely be less for a student. Let's be real. Will students procrastinate? Most certainly. but at least the more that we can give them support in the scaffolding stage, generally more projects. Right. Think about different components for projects, especially multimodal projects. If they're doing something with video, if they're doing something with 3D printing in the library, if they design poster and make sure that fits together and you have to print it, there might be some longer. So again, the more that you can plan out and start to weave this into the course schedule, even since midterms or midterms to the end, the better. Think about different steps along the way where you can build this into class time, so students don't see this as just the more traditional cycle you might get an assignment sheet and then you turn this back into the 4 weeks. This should be actually built into what class.
All right. Well, you do want to identify what support resources are available for your students. So thinking ahead a little bit, we do, who's going to teach them how to use this tool if they need to learn how to use it. Sometimes those available kind of self-learning tutorials online that you can direct them to. Sometimes there's AU support, workshop where they can ask questions. But you do want to think through, like, if they don't use this thing, how we and the answer doesn't have to be, you do not necessarily have to teach them, but you want to kind of think ahead. And that also, if they want to who can they contact, who can they go to? Because again, if it's 301, project is, emailing you with all of their technical problems. And I would say, think through the support they might need at each stage of the process, when they're planning their assignment, when they're actually creating it, if they're doing any kind of post-production editing, if they're creating some kind of audio-visual project. We don't want them to get it over their head doing this. So I also recommend for existing tutorials before designing and your own, to save some time. There are workshops and things available, campus resources available that can help your students do this, like the library. So we are here to help your students, more actually, to finish these projects. So especially thinking about multimodal projects or digital projects, really, it's kind of what a dream thought. So we have a few examples on here. We've hyperlinked all them that works in photos on the next page from my own classes. Use your assignment sheet to highlight ways learning outcomes can still be met with these projects. We do need to do a little bit more of the connecting for our students, so they don't think this is just another video assignment or great essay, right? We have to get comfortable in this aspects. It also can be on during the remarketing and promotion process for us as we start to articulate how these projects can help with the learning and process. Not all projects are process assignments, so keep this in mind. Some more suitable project topic or course modes or interests or skill levels than others. You're thinking about what they want to share, what is their focus of their thesis or their content and research, what made the platform for the learning best. So the next slide, if we can click this, and when we share the PowerPoint, if this link doesn't work for you, feel free to shoot me an email. We need to do the exit on PowerPoint to get this. So this assignment, and by this project, doing better students volunteer semester with after school program serves families and in Costa, and the students were either volunteering with 5 to 18-year-olds or working in the office, and they had a choice of what their mode was, and they had to share what their experience was volunteering that semester and integrate 2 course texts at the same time. So we started talking about this project right before the midterm, so it's probably we had been verbally referencing class since the first day of class, but we introduced an assignment sheet with another multiple text students tend to be a little skeptical of, but then often point to at the end of the semester or in their projects kind of shape their learning about the course. We start looking at that, the assignment sheet, and I've scaled from doing things like a reflection that it's actually a first round they do a what they can do. They do feedback to their peers on either what they're trying from their graph was. We do a conference pre-spring break or post-spring break, pre-Thanksgiving,
where we talk about their plans, talk about their content, their mode, different resources on campus. We go to the Digital Research and Inquiry Lab, which actually shares all of the different resources that AU has, and that really does become like a light bulb moment for them, the different options. So now I'm just going to page through some examples again before we look at these. One student, she actually got a really good central report by the new semester and working with them all year. She did a diagram using the 3D printer that each time was printed with the 3D printer in the library. And then she worked in different references. She worked in high school mostly, so that's why you see things like law and a set of books with the graduation cap on top of it. They went bowling with the kids. Kids were teenagers, I'm sorry, were very focused on how they could make money one day, so their money bags at the bottom. And then she incorporated quotes from Forstman's and she walked us through them in the presentation. Somebody else, you're with the elementary school kids, and they use Flash to get the kids to learn different letters and sound patterns. So she created the own set of letters, and each letter corresponded to something that they regularly did. So my student was a white one. One kid told me since she was the opposite of a Karen, so that's why they often before they sat down to do some of the sound. So free was obviously the card. We talked about about identity, race. So obviously didn't know background. So next we emphasize is whatever mode is, you need to have a connection to what the student's thesis or purpose in their content is. We can't just pick, say, video because we like video. There needs to be some relationship to the experience we've had. So, for instance, this one student, Marina, me, she was working through some of her own some violence semester. She was thinking about her identity. The kids were asking her about her identity, so she decided to create Chinese lanterns, and obviously she couldn't put a candle in the small children. Fire. She got really reconfigured lantern lights, and she put them in. They talked with the kids, and she did a whole list about what Chinese lanterns meant for her family. So many of the projects do focus on the student's own identity, learning what the current class, which often gets uncomfortable. But the projects gave them a way to reflect and integrate and look at their individual experiences. This was a really exciting one. This was kind of a diagram. If you see it set up on the here where we were in Anderson 6J, and it unfolded, and Bree's looking at her own assumptions as a Hispanic woman from Texas, and she thought that she was sort of not such a bug, but not subject to the same biases as some other people, and she'd been working through a second semester. And the kids were also working through their own biases about her. So as you go through, you see different options. There's a video reflection, games. There are a lot of games one semester. This is another game. There's a flashcard game. A lot of students had that were among. So this was one of the flashcards where students would talk through. For instance, the student keeps screaming, raising a voice. You're starting to feel frustrated. How do you respond? People to be boundaries and showing their frustration. So kind of the same questions that they would have to ask themselves during the tutoring episode. But as you see, there's absolutely now to 70 slides and flashes from 7. But if you need ideas, everything from games, academic posters, we just talked to Dean Trogman once, and she reminded me of the nails somebody did one year because she was really talented at doing her own acrylic nails. So she painted the metro system on a nail, where she did the anacostia river on a nail. She put a balloon on the nails because the children said that she should do that. After she spanked a child, she could not put the middle finger that she liked or something. You get the that each project should. Great. Okay, so hopefully those are inspiring. So it's really fun to think about the different options that exist, right? It doesn't show you it doesn't have to be kind of one thing. Good. Yeah. So we could these are a few other places again. We just want to emphasize the key with multimodal or digital project is think about how to communicate effectively across different modes. You may visually what you share more over in the course. For instance, I don't think Bree is neuron or diagram, right? It really has to be dependent on your own individual learning. And most likely, from the projects when I post, it's most likely tied to some way. Um, we need to think about how those the coaching process, especially using digital. We have to, look in that time to semester, the younger your students are, especially in first years of college, the more time you need to give them. Looking at sizing, start using this by late next semester. So there are things narrative thinking about these things. Uh, citation corrections. I think this is something that when we start students think this isn't that big a deal. It's actually easier. And recently get more deliberate here about how to say this every semester, even in my specification based project, the project that you just saw, they're talking about where to get the police, they have to include a works cited, and they have to be citing versus in text in a logical way. So even say that one done the figure out with 3D printed H cabin, there was a QR code. You scan the QR code, went to the works cited list, and the Caribbean's figured out each book course text connected to the project in some way. So again, be a little creative, especially some of the projects. I started working for academic posters and a couple other awkward to get the citations in there, and that's really projects. Do you want any comments or support?
Yeah, of course. These I kind of mentioned this before, but have a plan. Just the main thing there is your students are going to have trouble with moving to that grade assignment. Okay, so we want to get you all talking. We've been talking a lot, and so we would like you to find a partner or student group, and think through your classes, the classes that you teach this fall, for example. And think through what types of assignments you typically use in your course, and do you have any that might lend themselves well to converting them to a digital or technical project. So when thinking about that, you can talk about why this particular assignment kind of jumps out to you, and what new considerations with support might be needed if you wanted to go ahead with switching it. Okay, so go ahead. We're going to give you guys a couple minutes to talk amongst yourselves.
Um, what kind of assignments do you think when you so converted, and what new types of considerations for you?
All right. Does anybody want to share what they were talking about? Anybody have a fun idea that they want to share? Yeah. Okay. Cool. Okay. Yeah. That's great. Is it the first time you tried that? Great. It sounds like you have the potential to get some really interesting
It
stuff.
feels like it's
So,
so
yeah.
I would say, especially the first time you think about keyboard assignment, give yourself, your students, much more grace from you. Says something. Nice.
Yeah. No, it's a smart way to somebody else figured that race to be up. Got start. Definitely. Yes. But
I think so. Multimodal projects, two different multimodal projects, two different courses semester, and one course all, and the other course 11. There, there was only a lot of personality. There were a whole bunch of student issues to get out of it, and the first projects were really welcome, but a decent amount of projects they go, it's the first time I put a multimodal project this writing class. I'm going to read this as it is, but next time around, I'm changing the operating specification rates for brick, and I pay attention a little bit more to some of these elements of professional stuff. Um, yeah, someone's been upfront Spanish, which makes sense for audience with Latino community, but especially if it's for our writing class who are reading English, like she really did it that weekend. I'm like, yeah, that's something I want to control a little bit more on my it's not she first time. I agree.
Yeah, I think it's valid because you don't necessarily have to accept something slapped together, right? But I think it can feel daunting to the students and to be instructive if you're trying to expect something super like professional, or award-winning documentary, something like this. So, um, yeah, I think it's all about finding the balance of what works for you. To I think even on a research paper, something is often sort of did you do what I should do kind of to them in our profession.
I think too that's why
Into sooner we can start working this through this semester,
the better. It's not only all craft fiction, but it will at least eliminate some. And if they can see what others are doing, I think it also inspires them to challenge themselves. I feel like Al's work. So, what? Yeah, I will say in the multimodal assignments, I use specifications based rubrics. So it's sort of like a late for credit up until this point. If you guys want to see, we would do ABC to get your grade. Does that make sense? So for instance, you're getting credit scientific examples up for doing your conference semester, for doing your reflection, for doing the responses to their peers' work, for presenting your final. Do they integrate course text? Do they work cite course text? Are they cited in some way? Is there a relationship between the remote and their content? Is it more balance right now? We still want them turning out something that looks somewhat professional, clean, right? Um, Especially when you start talking about those things and showing them how to do reports, I think you're going to self-assessment because with some students, especially that is a little bit tough. So maybe the week before the project is due, we sit down, discussion about it. Both students have that like we commit to a work site. Can I start doing this after last week? 3 people missed the work site for break, and they were surprised by the grade. And my reason was more on sometimes to find you different variations of it. 9 first 3 people forgot to say that's kind of fun first to me. But we're going to step back and they would do some self assist. So at least like goes on really for us and this becomes a big help. So but, there's moving friend with specifications based book thing, which might be the start. Uh, or Sarah. How did cool. But it's fun. Like, love it. Oh, hoping Gorky, did you have some? Yeah. 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 Mhm. Nothing. Yeah. Mhm. It's great. Yeah. Still. Yeah. Uh, mhm. Mhm. Yeah. Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. I think what you're also talking to is their engagement throughout the process. Think about point about resource minutes. Like it doesn't necessarily have to be something right in, but it can be something that can be required like 5 minutes with like little chunks of class time throughout the semester to work on building this process instead of looking at it as that pro semester. Yep. I know I talk about these kinds of assignments all the time, thinking that's we did one of these in college. It would probably can. I would have been one of those. I also actually something else that I showed us in here. So our PowerPoint will send you on it is a digital assignment which actually created. Yeah. So through the DO in the library, we created this toolkit. It is a lot of what we talked about today, right? So about insights for evaluate that tips for classroom integration, but there's also really some guides with sample prompts, sample rubrics, sample timelines for how to introduce it into the classroom. And then we have the corresponding Canvas module that has some links to resources that you can just put in your Canvas course and have students use those. So it's meant to help get you started if you're interested. So you can use the QR code. But we also have something that Amanda created for mobile students specifically. So this is a process on technologies for students. This is kind of a student-facing resource. Once you have the slides, you can take this graph use it for your classes as well. All right. So thank you very much. Like we're out of time, but we can stick around if you have any questions. And the Bethesda survey that CFP would like you to fill out. There's also paper versions I saw on the table outside. So thank you very much.